Welcome to this new chapter of this course of vital energy and Tantra. We're going to work right now breathing. That is the fundamental thing we need to work on to regulate our vital energy in us. Because breathing is the main source of vital energy through our lives. It is what is producing energy in our present moment. So when we're not breathing correctly, we're accumulating this, and over time, this will express in different ways that they're not good. So the idea is to be conscious of our breathing and learn how to control it also and project it in any way possible, because that will allow us to conquer our maximum potential in any way in our lives. So breathing, it is generating energy. That's why we call this part of ourselves the pranic center, because it's where we're producing prana, ki, vital energy. That's the same. So this is the place where we are generating the energy. And usually we're so used to think of energy in regard to what we eat, for example, but because of breathing is always there with us, we are not actually paying attention to it. And we are usually not breathing correctly because we are sustaining incorrect postures and breathing superficially. And that over time will accumulate and produce several sickness. So when we are aware of this and we learn to reprogram ourselves to be able to breathe correctly and have a good posture, well, things start to change in our life. But also when we learn to control our breathing and project it consciously, there is where we can actually conquer all the maximum human potential. So beyond being a generator of energy, it is directly related to stamina. And stamina is something that you work in the present moment. So someone that, for example, that doesn't have experience breathing can work in certain techniques and get more stamina out of it. But also the stamina is something that we work over time, something that we muscle up. Like for example, when we go to the gym and grow muscle, it's something that we need to repeat. We need to repeat those exercises all over again for the muscle to grow. And then the same happens to the stamina. So stamina is not only related to the exercise of the body, but the energy of the breathing that's sustaining this exercise in the present moment. So stamina has these two dimensions, the present moment and working stamina over time and muscle it up so the human being can act more intense in longer periods of time. That's what the stamina does. That's what the stamina is aiming for, to grow this possibility of acting in our maximum power in longer periods of time. No matter if we are exercising or delving with mental processes or emotional process or spiritual process, stamina also involves all of them, involves all the dimensions of our body, but it's pretty much a physic dimension of ourselves. So that's one very important point. So the next point is about connecting and disconnecting. Our breathing is allowing us to connect and disconnect to all the dimensions possible of life, physically, mental, emotionally, and spiritually, all the dimensions. And also it's involved in sustaining the states that we're connecting and disconnecting from. These states can last few seconds and also can last long periods of time. So it's more abstract than stamina, but it's our capacity to hold a state of our being. And that's regarding to our consciousness of how we can connect and sustain a state and disconnect from that. Also, the breathing is allowing us to let in and let out, not only oxygen and energy, but also other dimensions of our life and symbolic things that we can let in or let out. For example, energy, emotions, situations, thought processes, the intellect working, everything that we can let in and out. Eating, breathing is always in relation to all this. And symbolically in our minds, it's helping in the process of letting in and letting out. And it physically is what it's doing. It's letting in the oxygen and letting out the residue, the CO2 of the breathing. Breathing is regulating this. Connecting, disconnecting, sustaining states, letting in and letting out, releasing. The next point is about the auto-regulation of our body. For example, healing, all the healing processes we face, physically or mentally or emotionally. All this is affected by our vital energy. And because of the breathing is the first source of vital energy and the most important one that is working always in our present moment. It's an indispensable way for us to give the body what it needs, give the mind and the emotion what it needs for it to work correctly. And for example, in the case of healing, when we breathe and we nurture ourselves, it helps the process of healing, because we are not actually in control of that healing. It happens automatically. It's what we are. So the only thing we need to do is to nurture ourselves correctly for that to happen. That's why we vitalize through other ways, but in this case, breathing, that's the most important one, because it's the one bringing the most amount of vital energy to the table, always. So correct breathing, it's also involved in auto-regulation processes of the body and healing. Also, it helps with pain and suffering. When you breathe correctly, you can calm the pain and the suffering, even if it's the body or the mind suffering or the emotion suffering. When you breathe correctly, you dissipate all these states that we are living. Usually we can see that humans express themselves in ways and patterns of breathing and postures that enhance the suffering and the pain and all these states that we can anchor to, things that are actually happening. And we're not thinking of our breathing, but our breathing is always expressing emotionally. So when we take control of that mechanism and project it differently, we start to mitigate all that's happening in us, and it starts to dissolve and it starts to balance itself again in a normal state of being. So breathing is very important here. Now, another point is our spiritual power. Our spiritual power is involved, for example, in our astral voyages, in our astral projections, or all our relationship with the spiritual world that is transcendent to our normal being. But a lot of humans are connected to these dimensions. And when we work these dimensions, the spiritual power is a must. And spiritual power grows from different practices and things that we can do. But one of them is the vital energy. If we are in a high state of vital energy, we are helping ourselves to grow that spiritual power. It also requires other things that we're not going to discuss here. But because of the breathing, it's always with us producing vital energy. It's also directly related to this spiritual power. So breathing correctly, it's important for all our astral projections, for all the connections to the spiritual realm. And this grows, the spiritual capacity, the spiritual power grows and accumulates also as the vital energy. And you can use it in several ways. If you have had this type of experiences in your life, you know that some of them can actually discharge your energy, and quickly. And this is related to what I'm saying, because the spiritual power can fluctuate depending on things that are happening in those transcendent levels. And our energy can actually drain really fast if we don't have control of this. So by controlling our breathing, we are allowing ourselves to maintain a cohesion of this spiritual power, and for us not to drain when we are dealing with all these processes. In the contrary, we are able to sustain more energy and even get more out of the process, because it's all about how we focus ourselves to live all this phenomena. If a person is not focused correctly, it's going to drain, and his spiritual power is going to drain, and also vital energy is going to drain. So breathing, vital energy, and the spiritual power, they're connected. And because we can breathe in the present moment in different ways and project ourselves energetically, it's something that is always regulating the spiritual power. Now, obviously, there's the more physiological part of breathing, of the oxygenation, of how it's actually regulating our blood circulation, our digestion, and obviously our parasympathetic nervous system that is controlling the intensity of how the processes in our body are happening. So for them to go faster or to go slower, our blood circulation, our digestion, our nervous system, everything can go faster and slower through our breathing, depending on how we project it. So here we're going to work the methods we can use. We can breathe obviously fast, that will inevitably bring a lot of energy to us. Or we can breathe very slow, elongating everything that we're doing in our breathing so that we can delve deep in ourselves in every way possible and get all the relaxation that our breathing is offering us. So we can breathe fast, we can breathe slow. We can also do it through the nose, through the mouth. Through the nose will affect the upper part of the head, and the mouth will affect the lower part of the head. But also through the nose, we are regulating in a more subtle way our breathing, and also the things that we can do with our breathing. For example, moving or creating or thinking, all the intellect, the creation, the imagination. Our nose is allowing us to dosify this in a very subtle way for it to happen from the most subtle to the most intense. But our mouth is also, as it is bigger, it allows more air in and out in the least amount of time. So that's important in several situations. But the most important thing of the mouth is that it's allowing us to express our visceral dimension. It's expressing our visceral dimension. Through sound, we are expressing and releasing, obviously, air and CO2, but we are expressing. And it's very important for us to express, because life is not just about taking in, it's about letting out, and all the ways we're letting out. One of those ways is how we sound, how we express our visceral being of what we're feeling, what we're thinking, how we are. So that's very, very indispensable. Now, in the inhalation and retention and exhalation, there are different things happening. Through the inhalation, we are in the process of reception, of receiving. We are allowing things to come in, not just the air and oxygen, but we are metaphorically, symbolically, and energetically letting things in. And that's what we're working there. In the retention is the process of assimilation. Is the moment where we assimilate the air we got in, the oxygen, but also assimilate everything that symbolically or metaphorically we took from the environment. So we stay with that. We retain the air, for example, we retain the oxygen for our body to get the more amount of energy out of that. Also, it's a very emotional way to dive deep in ourselves. As we dive in the water, when we submerge in the water, and we take a deep breath and we hold. The same thing we do to dive deep in ourselves, to meditate, to go to the unconscious mind, to our emotional mind, all the things that we can do in our mind. The retention here is very important, because it's how we assimilate all this, and we give time for this to happen. And it's very important that we do this without being anxious or feeling afraid. You know, for example, when we dive in the water, we usually feel constrained and we feel fear. That's not the idea. The idea is to be calm, always to be calm. When we retain, the idea is to do all this subtly and as calm as we can. Last but not least, the exhalation, that is the expression, when we release. And in the exhalation, we are controlling and dosifying the air also, because the idea is not just to let everything out one moment to the other, but to consciously let air out, regulating that, dosifying it. So all the things that we are doing, even if, for example, if we are moving or we are thinking or creating or feeling, it's a balance between exhaling and the movement and the emotion and the creative process. If you move and you feel without your breathing, you will lose control. You will find fatigue. So that's why we create a balance between the breathing and the movement, for example, and the way we express. When we express in our lives, whatever we are expressing, because we are breathing, the exhalation here is fundamental. And the balance between what we are exhaling and what we are doing and expressing is something that is intertwined. So the air is moving our expression, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Our air is moving the expression of what we are doing. So that's very, very fundamental. So there are muscles involved. The most important one is the diaphragm, that is moving the air in and out, but also the intercostal muscles. These are the fundamental muscles moving our breathing, and the ones that muscle up when we repeat this every day of our lives. But we can also integrate everything, the rest of our muscles, to our breathing. And we do this to allow the energy to go through our cells entirely and get the maximum possible capacity of our breathing. So for example, we can contract and relax our pelvic muscles, our throat muscles, our mouth muscles, our tongue, our eyes. We can always contract and relax these muscles with our breathing, but also our arms, our hands, our fingers, our legs and feet. And when we compromise all of ourselves physically to our breathing, we get the maximum potential out of the breathing. the maximum capacity out of it, the maximum vital energy out of it. And that allows that energy to flow all over us and get distributed correctly and harmonically. And that's pretty much the idea of why we use all the muscles when we breathe, and we contract and relax. And that's the idea of Tantra. It's not just observing our breathing as it happens naturally. That's a way, it's important also to have consciousness over our natural breathing, but also learn how to articulate ourselves through the process of breath work for us to catapult ourselves to every dimension possible of our life, because our breathing is there always in our present moment. And that's the idea. That's the idea of Tantra, of learning how to consciously articulate all these intrinsic mechanisms we have to project in all the dimensions of ourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that's pretty much it. We're gonna go to the practical part where we're gonna work all these things that I've been talking about in some exercises that you will need to do and some homework that you will need to do over time for you to reprogram your relation with your breathing. And that's what we're doing here, is reprogramming how we conceive ourselves, how we articulate ourselves, and how we project ourselves. In this case, through breathing. So I'm gonna give you some exercises for you to work this out. Thank you.